The heavens have opened and it's a gloriously rainy autumn day in Sydney today. And I thought, what better opportunity than to repot some plants? So that's precisely what I'm going to do today. I'm going to show you the actual processes that I go through when I repot plants. I had a few people asking me about these ones when I showed them in a video the other day. So today I'm going to cover off on a few topics. I'm going to talk about getting plants out of their pots, the controversial practice of root pruning, and then how to stick plants into a pot, whether you want to put multiples in one or a single plant. Got a heap of different species of cacti and succulents to share with you as we go. I'll talk about a few different things, share some anecdotes, hopefully make it interesting. You know, with regularity, I say on this channel, oh, I'm just going to skip over this, no one wants to see it. And with regularity, equal regularity, I get comments saying, don't skip it, I want to see it, I love it. So this is for you guys today, a full episode on repotting plants and the processes behind it. Let's jump into it, shall we? Step one, getting your plants out of their pots. Now, this applies whether or not you've got a pot of seedlings like these Stenoserius Bernecii that desperately need a bit more room, or you have a single individual plant. You want to be careful to get it out of the pot, because what you don't want to do is damage the roots. Perfect time of year to do this is in those shoulder seasons, autumn and spring. Temperatures aren't too high, they're not too cold. If the plant's dormant in winter time, it takes a lot longer for them to recover, heal over, because the plant's metabolism is quite low. And if you do it at the height of summer, the heat stress combined with the stress of repotting can straight up kill them. So autumn to me seems like the best time. Now, what you don't want to do is work with a pot of plants that's been watered too recently. Wet soil makes this process a whole lot harder. This one, relatively dry, should be okay. Now, this is a lot easier, I tell you, for plants in plastic pots. What we want to do is give the pot a bit of a squeeze. That's going to loosen up the soil. Just around the edges is fine. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Look at that. And then you should, after a few moments, be able to tip it out. You probably should have a glove on, but you know what? Reckless gardening. It's all the rage these days. This is hurting my fingers. Oh, there we go. And out they come. This process of taking seedlings out of a pot is called pricking out. And because they've got quite delicate roots, it's a point in time when you can easily kill your little babies. So what we want to do is identify the plants probably furthest from the center, work from the outside in and pull them out. Now, if you try and do this when the plants are too young, what you're going to find is that they're more susceptible to injury. That means that they're more likely to die when you do this. Plants of this size, they're not going to be too worried about a little bit of root damage. It'll heal them. In fact, you could prune the roots, and I'll talk about that in a second. And eventually, inevitably, you get to a little clump of plants that are all tied together. Their roots are all tangled. So you just want to quite delicately separate those. And there you have it. Plants separated. Easy, no dramas. Let's move on. So you got your plant. What are we going to do now? Well, we're going to be patient. We're going to wait, because there's very likely a whole series of micro wounds all down the roots there. It's an inevitable result of pricking them out. If you take that plant, stick it straight back into a pot of soil that's a little bit moist, those Micro wounds are vectors, vector points essentially for the introduction of fungus or any other nasties, and very quickly you can have some very sick and very sad plants. So what we're going to do now is we're going to leave those plants for a few days, even a week. They don't need soil. They could sit out for weeks and weeks and weeks. They're going to be absolutely fine because I've waited until they're a decent enough size, and then only after I've given those roots enough time to heal am I going to put them back into a pot. But we're not going to wait today, because the good news is I've got some plants that I've already prepared earlier and they're ready to go. So the next thing I want to talk about is root pruning. So what's root pruning? As the name suggests, essentially trimming back the roots of your plants when you repot them. Do you need to do it? Honestly, I'm not an advocate one way or another. Some people, they argue staunchly, trim your roots back, it's a fantastic opportunity. Others are like, minimize the damage to your roots. Me, I don't know, I've never tested it either way, but I'll show you the process in case you want to try it out. This here, this is a little baby Lophophora williamsii peyote button, which you can see I've trimmed back the roots already. If I want to do it to another one, here's one that hasn't been trimmed. Well, what do we need? Nice fine pair of scissors. I guess you don't need them to be too small, but I find that these easy. These are like sewing scissors, I think. And what you're going to want to do, and I find this is generally something that you use on plants more often when they've got thick fleshy taproots, like your Lophophoras, like your Astrophytums, that sort of thing. But maybe there are other instances too. And all you're going to do is you're going to hack back any of those little fine feeder roots until you're left with one thick tuberous taproot. Like that. Now, we are talking, of course, about not just micro wounds here, pretty significant root damage in this process, and so these plants, I would give them a couple of weeks of healing just in a cool, dry, very dry, you don't want them to get moist and humid, cool, dry place, let those wounds heal over, and then they're very easy to pot up when they don't have all those little roots. You can pretty much just press them into moist soil, no dramas at all. This little peyote's been sitting out, healing up for so long, it's actually started shooting roots into the air. So I reckon this is a good bet for a plant that's ready to go. Let's look at the process. For a plant like that one with a thick fleshy root that's had ample time to heal, you can load up a pot with moist soil, press a pencil into it just to create a bit of a divot, take your plant and stick it into the hole, ready to go. And if you want to, you can backfill a bit of that soil as well. Perfect. But what about those plants that don't have a nice thick taproot and we want to get them into a pot nice and neatly? Well, there are easy ways to do this too, so let me show you. I prepared a whole pot of these little Trichocereus hybrid seedlings earlier. This is a plant that goes by the very long convoluted name at the moment of Trichocereus arboricola orange California, crossed with Trichocereus flying saucer, and it's a coloured flower hybrid. I'll need to wait for these plants to grow up to see exactly what colour those flowers are, but it's an interesting thing nonetheless. Now, as you can see these are the seedlings that all came out of one pot. Some of them are much bigger than others, like this one, and some of them are tiny little runts. Now, depending on your proclivities and your space, you might just throw the runts out. I'm not going to, I'm going to pot them up, but I'm going to show you two processes using them. First one, plant like this one, probably due a pot of its own right now. So what we're going to do, we're going to hold the plant at the base of the body at pot height. Then, again, because it's been drying out, I can use moist soil. Moist soil is a good thing to use because you don't have to worry about inhaling any of the horrible rubbish that's in there. I suppose other than Legionnaire's disease, but you know, that's a whole other story. And then all you're going to do is backfill around the roots. Pretty straightforward. Press it down a little bit, not too heavily. You don't want to compact the soil. You just want to get rid of any air bubbles. It's a bit wobbly. And now, with plenty of root space, a little bit of fertilizer in there, that plant's all ready to go and put on a bit of size this autumn. But this is what we want to know how to do. So I'm going to show you now how we do it with some of the medium-sized tricho hybrids. We're going to take our larger pot. I think this is about a 10 centimetre pot. And what we're going to do is we're going to tip it onto a diagonal like this. And then we're going to fill it from the side. And as we go, and I'm going to choose some medium-sized plants here, we're going to lay them down in our little grid-like pattern, just like that, row by row, and backfill over their roots. Time for another row. Letting their roots just sit in the space. Press them down slightly if they're a bit wobbly, but don't worry too much about it. This is one of those things, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Like riding a bike. Little double-headed one there. And and then this is the last process. You can see there's just one final little gap. I'm going to fill in that gap just like so. Give it a bit of a shake to get the soil level all nice and level. And then at this point you might just need to pull some of the seedlings up, move them around delicately. You don't want to hurt their roots, but the soil is pretty loose at the moment, and so it's not too hard to do that. And there you have it. 9 plants, all now with a bit more root space, ready to go. So that's repotting for you. Pretty straightforward stuff, right? Just need to be careful, because if we get things wrong, this is when plants love to keel over and die. Anyway, that's it from me this week. I hope it's been interesting, and I hope you learned something. And if you got any questions, as usual, hit me up in the comments. If you want to support me, well, by watching this video you have, but you can also buy my t-shirts. And yeah, until next time, have a good one.